Good morning, Maria. I was just pouring myself a glass of water.
Awesome. That's very nice.
Yeah. News update, right? How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Doing much better now. Thank you.
Excellent.
How about you?
Me
How are you doing?
doing much better now. Thank
All
you.
right. Awesome. Awesome.
Well, welcome back to Coaching Conversations. If you're new here, we're two coaches who love digging deep into what actually creates real change, and we keep it honest, practical, and doable.
Yeah. And in today's episode, it's a big one because if you've been feeling overwhelmed or stressed, or like you're stuck on a hamster wheel or doing whatever, but never, feeling any closer to peace, this conversation's for you.
Right. We're diving into something so simple but so powerful that it can shift the way you live, work, and even think. It's about learning how to do less but better. Less noise, less unnecessary action, more alignment, more peace.
Right, because, let's be real, we all need peace, right? And, there's been a lot of anxiety, and I think that we all need to, bring it down and try to stay centered. So for most of us, you know, we're way too good at filling our lives with stuff that doesn't actually matter, including a lot of news. And we think productivity equals progress, but a lot of what we're doing, it's really just busy work. It's emotional clutter. It's running from one task to the next task. It's that major to-do list, and we're not really asking ourselves, is this even necessary?
Yeah. And, you mentioned anxiety and the news. And, one of my go tos is this idea of what is in our control and what is out of our control, and as much as possible staying within the realm of what can I control, what are my action steps, what can I actually do to affect change or to make a difference. And you know if I don't have any agency, it's about either finding a way to have agency
Mhm.
or making, having the realization that I'm spinning my wheels here on something that I am never going to be able to affect or change in any way. And so, uh, you know, I hope
Yeah.
that's useful to, someone who might be listening, this idea of focusing on what is in your control and not spinning out on what is not in your control. And also finding, points of action and agency.
Mhm.
But I diverge as per usual, right? So the the thing that nobody likes to hear with regards to their to-do list is that doing more doesn't guarantee that you're doing better. Sometimes it just guarantees that you're exhausted. And what today's lesson is about is this: real peace, real contentment comes from doing what's necessary, not what's urgent or expected or distracting.
Right. We've got to ask ourselves daily, am I spending time, am I spending my life, my energy, my mind on what really matters?
Yeah, that I mean, that's a really important pause, right? So let's break it down. Um, Doing less doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean lowering your standards. It means being strategic and intentional about where your life force goes. It's about realizing most of the things stealing your energy, those endless mental debates, the need to prove yourself, that overthinking spiral, they aren't necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I used to have that really a lot, where, and I think that uh, a lot of people have it. Some people have been able to center and control it, but I used to spiral a lot, where I used to have these conversations, especially if if I had some anxiety, then I would have these long extended arguments with nobody in the room, just in my mind. And, finally I was able to stop investing my energy in the things that that they don't need our attention, um, when you create the space for the clarity, the confidence, and the actual progress, the thing is, the kicker is, it's not just unnecessary actions we have to let go of. It's these thoughts as well, this mind whirling in the something that happened yesterday, something that happened 10 years ago, an argument or something that somebody didn't say to us or something we failed to say. Those thoughts, they're unnecessary as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, me too, right? It's this, we get into these habit loops where we're, regretting or, ruminating over the past or worried about the future. And we can really, it's make ourselves a little crazy in terms of like getting stuck in these habit loops that really don't go anywhere, and they just make us feel worse and worse and worse, and identify more and more and more with that state. These unnecessary thoughts, they create unnecessary emotions, which create unnecessary suffering. So it's important to cut the noise inside, and the outside becomes way easier to handle.
Yeah, no, no, definitely. I mean, when you start saying, okay, so what's necessary, right? Or when you catch that you're going into this loop, that's when you need to really take that break. And when you start noticing it, that's the first thing, that awareness, and then you're able to say, okay, so I'm doing that thing again that I don't need to do. And that's the only obviously journaling and meditating helped me tremendously, to stop doing that over and over again. But I think that at the end of the day, it's really a habit. It's just a habit. It's not who we are. And if it's a habit, we can change it. Right. But let me get some practical um, um, things that you can actually do to start practicing this today, right? So before you act, pause and ask, is it necessary? Not, is it expected? Not, will this impress people? Is this necessary for who I want to become? Even that thought, is it necessary for who I want to become? Is it empowering me, or is it disempowering me to have this thought over and over again, right? And, second, declutter your mental habits. Notice when you're replaying the same worry loop for the 10th time. Ask yourself, is this necessary? Is this thought helping me move forward, or just, burning my energy?
Yeah. And, you mentioned earlier about the negative habit loops. And I don't by any means want to make it sound like this is an easy thing to do, because it's really challenging. And I myself was caught in a super horrible negative habit loop yesterday into today. And it was really through my mindfulness practices and journaling that I was finally able to extricate myself out of the habit loop. So it's challenging, but like Maria said, it's a habit. And if it's a habit, we can change it. So if you find yourself in these, in a constant negative habit loop, please know that this is something that you can change, and you're not facing a life sentence. Okay.
Mhm.
uh, so the third piece of guidance that we'd like to offer is shrinking your focus. If your to-do list is making you anxious, slice it in half and then slice it in half again.
Yeah.
Work from a place of essentialism, not ego. And fourth, celebrate small aligned actions. It's not about how much you check off, it's about whether your choices reflect your truth.
Right. And the thing is that with that mental decluttering, that's really a big one, because I often find that's where you have the real success with coaching or with therapy, with journaling, when you are able to isolate a thought and then reframe it. Like, I was speaking to Lourdes earlier, where I do some day trading, and I was having a fantastic day, and then I crashed a little, but it kept replaying in my mind later in the day and then early in the morning. But once I had a conversation with Lourdes, we were able to reframe it together. And it's helpful to have a conversation with somebody else and say, "Oh, I keep replaying this thought," and that's why sometimes, if you can't speak to somebody, if you journal and just with that mindset, okay, I'm going to reframe and empower myself. I'm going to write down what it is what's going on. I'm going to validate this emotion, validate what the habit is, and I'm going to see what the root of this is. And when you reframe it, you go from disempowerment to empowerment. And it's, sometimes it's one thought, and that thought has, branches. And when you get that one thought, boom, you're like done with that. And so it's one less thing that's cluttering your mental capacity, really, because it's just taking up space, right? Anyway, did you want to add something to that?
Well, I think one of the things that I heard you say is about, feeling the emotion, right? And
Right.
validating the emotion. And that is one of the things that helped me this morning. I really tapped into, okay, well, what am I feeling within this habit loop? Where am I feeling that? And I got really curious about where in my body that was, pinging, where was it most present? And stepping into that and validating that and being with that, was part of my process for untethering myself from it. So yeah.
Right. Awesome. Well, we'd like to hear from you too. We want to hear your stories. What's one thing you realized today that you can let go of? Or, if this brought up a question about where you're spending your energy, we're here for the conversation. And, you just never know, if you add that comment, who you're going to help by sharing your insight.
Absolutely. And your story could be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. So don't be shy. And in all of this, the biggest transformation that you are opening yourself up to experience is that you'll stop feeling scattered and stretched thin, and you'll start feeling grounded and peaceful. And the most surprising insight you could take away is that you don't need to do more to feel fulfilled. You need to do less, but more in alignment.
Right. So important. And, at the end of the day, we all want to feel like we're more than just productive robots, right? It's about feeling emotionally free, focused, fully present in your own life, and that higher level of really gratitude and happiness. We're not here to manage chaos. We're here to build a life that actually feels good to live.
Yes, absolutely. So this week, we want to ask you to ask yourself throughout the day, is this thought necessary? Is this action necessary?
Yeah, absolutely. Is this thought necessary? Is this action necessary? So important, these questions. And if the answers give you a no, give yourself permission to let it go. No, not tomorrow, not when you're less busy, but now, less clutter, more clarity, less noise, more peace.
You don't have to prove yourself by doing everything. You prove yourself by doing what matters and doing it from a place of strength and truth. And that's what we want to leave you with today. So thank you for spending time with us. And remember, you are allowed to simplify. You're allowed to protect your energy, and you're allowed to be at peace.
All right. So we'll see you next time. And until then, choose less, choose better, and choose you.